Okay, we're on. By the way, where are you, Amelia? I'm talking with Amelia Roosevelt of Baroque, the Repast Baroque Ensemble. By the way, did you found this group, the
Yes, I
Repast?
did. Yep, I'm the
And
founder
are you in New York City or in New York State or where?
in Brooklyn, New York. In
In
New York.
Brooklyn.
Yes.
Yeah, that has become such a great art center. Brooklyn,
Yes.
really exciting. Um, we are speaking about, again, I'm speaking with violinist, as in Baroque, violin, viola, Amelia Roosevelt. We're going to discuss Repast. Am I pronouncing that okay? Repast, suppose?
Repast.
Baroque
Yep.
Ensemble. Their CD out on help on MSR Classics, CD 2019, Goldberg Variations. Hang on, everybody. Goldberg Variations in a new, hello, underlined new, and may I add, really perfect arrangement for Baroque ensemble of these Goldberg variations. And what I mean by that, for all of us in music, we all know the Sitkovetsky, the wonderful string trio version. I hate the word arrangement, but you know, a realization of the Goldbergs. But
Mhm.
this Baroque instrument realization is so, as I told you before we started taping, it's so exactly what my ears want to hear, if you get my drift, without compromising in any way the style, the character, I don't know, the aura of
Uh-huh.
harpsichord playing these incredible
Uh-huh.
Goldberg variations. That's the great triumph. So I salute you. The recording uh, is superb. The engineering, the ensemble is fabulous. Let's start there. Okay, so Amelia, you are a
Yes.
Baroque violinist, violist. You founded the ensemble, Repast Baroque Ensemble.
Uh-huh.
Tell me about your instruments for starters. The year is what I'm
Okay.
getting at because it's so exciting. Then we'll talk about your colleagues.
Okay. So my instrument is a Richard Duke violin made in London in 1773, and it it was sort of it's funny. It was a wonderful stroke of luck that I got that instrument. I had started playing Baroque violin a little bit in graduate school, and I needed to buy a real Baroque instrument. I was about to go to Holland to study in Amsterdam to study Baroque violin, and I didn't have much time to look for an instrument, so I just stopped by at a violin dealer named William Monacle, who was the guy who was the sort of main person on the East Coast for Baroque instruments, who was on Staten Island. And I was coming home from playing a concert in Delaware, going back up to New York, and I stopped and I tried out six violins in my price range, and this one he had just gotten from an auction in London, and it had sat in an attic for 100 years or something. And so he had bought it at auction and then just restored it a little bit. It had been in good shape, but
Hmm.
he just restored it a little. And so the glue had dried the night before, so I was the first person to try it out. And it was hands down the nicest violin of the six that I tried. And so I took it home for 2 weeks and then bought it. And it's great because it's an English instrument, which is not very expensive because it's not Italian.
Hmm.
Um, but it was one of the best makers in London of his time. And he was sort of older when he made that violin in 1773. So it was still kind of Baroque, even though it was already kind of the classical
Yeah,
period.
interesting, interesting. And he
Yeah.
was a master, clearly.
Yeah.
The instrument has a beautiful, beautiful sound on the recording. It's gorgeous. The fiddle. What about the viola? What about your viola?
The viola, actually, I borrowed from a friend. I don't own a viola.
Well, music,
And
you know, the business is the business.
yes, I'm not really a violist. Um, and it was made just by this guy in Texas named Timothy Johnson, who just made these beautiful
Huh.
copies of Baroque instruments. And a friend of mine who had it and plays it all the time just loaned it to me. But it's just a great modern copy of a
Ah,
Baroque instrument.
nice
Yeah.
and yummy, yummy, yummy sound. Again, I think I mentioned you off. off camera, I had a little difficulty in terms of really being quite clear. For example, piccolo, cello, and regular cello stuff. Just the sounds are so delicious that I got a little bit lost. But I seem to recall a low viola sound that I thought, I'm pretty sure I was hearing it. It just had such a beautiful, resonant, rich, wonderful sound. So
Yeah.
I'm going to talk, I'm going to ask you a little bit about, because I'm so curious, at what point did you say, or did you, enough, I'm a Baroque artist.
Uh-huh.
Enough of this modern stuff. Give me my Baroque bow and that's it. Or
Uh-huh.
is it some, or do you, cross over, if you'll forgive the expression?
Yeah. Well, at that point, when I went to study in Holland, um, I had the opportunity to just play Baroque violin for about a year and a half. And that was a great immersion. And at that point, I thought, okay, I'm a Baroque violinist now because I really was just focusing on that instrument. And then over the years, that was in 97. So since then, I've sort of come back to really wanting to keep my modern violin playing up. And I'm basically a Baroque violin player, but I'm always happy to play modern violin. And in the summers, I play at the Carmel Bach Festival, and we play both on modern and Baroque instruments there. And
Oh,
that's my chance to sort of get back into shape. And
in a way, it was a silly question because, of course, violinists are going to play their modern instrument as the gigs arrive, and if they happen to have some specialty in Baroque performance practice, of course, So it was kind of a dumb question, but I think part of it was that I'm absolutely in love with this CD. I mean, it's clearly Baroque
uh-huh,
performance practice, if you will, as silly
right.
even as that sounds. So I wanted to ask. So in other words, but was there a moment where I guess grad school where you went, ooh, this stuff is interesting. What's this about the bow? What's the technique? Yeah,
Uh-huh.
was that
Yeah,
it?
it was in grad school, yeah. Um, and I guess so um I always was a little conflicted about the career possibilities with playing the violin, and I studied really intensively through high school, and I went to a Manhattan School of Music prep
Mm,
from when I was 10 through the end of high school, and always was very, very serious and sort of on the track to going to conservatory. Um, but I decided not to go to conservatory because I had been around enough conservatory students in my high school years that I thought it seemed a little miserable. um, so I did a 4-year undergraduate in liberal arts, and then I went back to graduate school. I did decide, well, I really need to do this. I can't do something else. I want to become a violinist, but it was still um, I sort of had problems of, what kind of life I'd have with as a violinist because I didn't necessarily want to play in a symphony orchestra.
mm,
Um, and anyway, so playing the Baroque violin and playing that repertoire, which I really loved, and also playing in smaller chamber orchestras as in Baroque music groups
yeah.
was really appealing to me. So I just sort of followed that direction because it was um, it just appeared as the thing that I wanted to do. And I could still, be a violinist, but just play the kind of music that I really wanted to play.
Okay, let me summarize. So you tried to get away and you couldn't. That's the
Uh-huh.
story of all of us who are hooked for a lifetime in the arts. It's no
Uh-huh.
fun. It's hard work. You make little money. It's a great struggle forever, unless you're one of those, one half of 1%. But just as in my own case, there's no getting away from it.
Right.
I'm stuck till they take me to the nursing home. So that is a wonderful story. And by the way, what you've just said speaks to what I hear.
Oh,
In other
good.
words, yeah, you're a violinist, all right. It's such wonderful playing. It's just gorgeous. Now, okay, so we have Amelia Roosevelt a little bit taken care of here. How
Uh,
about Emmy Ferguson, Baroque flute, traverso flute,
uh-huh.
beautiful, such gorgeous playing. How'd you run into Emmy and the others? Katie Reitman, I hope I have her name pronounced right.
And
Stephanie Corwin, and Gabe shove it. We're going to talk about these people in a bit, but give me an overview of how you met these folks.
Okay. So Emmy um, was in New York. She went to the Juilliard program for historical instruments,
Mhm.
and I just met her, I think, through um, probably through playing some jobs with her, and also just through colleagues. It's such a small
Sure.
world that you
Yeah.
just meet people.
Yeah.
And we originally hired her. I think the first program we did with her was the musical offering, which was a great experience. And we also did another program with her on kind of French music based on a program sort of talking about the exotic theme in French Baroque music.
Hmm.
And
And
we just,
embellishment and so on, ornamentation,
yeah,
incredible.
yeah.
You know, I think
So,
I put it a little bit backwards. Maybe we should start about Repast Baroque Ensemble, how that came together, because it sounds like, the, like a magnet, it attracted maybe Emmy and others. Does that make any sense? What?
yeah,
Let's
sure.
talk about the ensemble. I think I've read somewhere something, what, 2006? No,
2004, actually, we
2004.
started. Yeah. So I had lived in Europe for when I went to Europe in '97 to study. I stayed for several years, and I originally went to Amsterdam and then went to Cologne and played with a lot of groups in Cologne. And then I decided to move back to New York, um, and I just felt like I wanted to start my own group. Basically, I wanted to play more in the style that I had learned to play in Europe. And so I started the group actually with with a different flute player back in 2004, um, and then he moved back to Europe actually, and we I started with also a different cellist and harpsichordist. But these things sort of happen.
Sure.
But um, yeah, we began just playing a concert series in New York, and also then um, developing our repertoire. And the it was usually a core of first violin, flute, and
Mm.
cello and harpsichord, and then just violin, and then cello and viola da gamba and harpsichord. Um, so we've had sort of different core members over the years. We had a theorbo player in the group at one
Mm.
point. Um,
Nice.
yeah. And basically the concert series continued to grow and to develop, and we just sort of kept on going. It's hard to sustain yourself as a chamber music group, a Baroque chamber music group, but we did.
Especially in
Uh,
New York City, where there are 14,000 of them.
yeah, exactly. And we have we are continually trying to build our audience more, but we have a solid audience base, and we have
That's great.
concerts in Brooklyn and in Manhattan. We do 4 programs a year now, and I guess Repast started before the Juilliard program started in New York, so there was this sort of smaller pool of players. But
Yeah.
as that Juilliard graduate school program started for Baroque music, there that drew a lot more people to New York,
I see.
um,
Yeah.
and to study Baroque instruments. And so the group has really evolved also because of that. I mean, there have been just more players
Yeah, it
available.
makes perfect sense. Yeah, that the
Yeah,
personnel would change a little bit. I was just,
yeah.
over time, but I was just wondering if this on the CD, if this group on the CD are kind of, sort of, anything like a settled bass group, or are these just, friends and colleagues, and you knew you could pull this one
Um,
off?
so the group now we have a different cellist. Our cellist moved to Santa Fe, so even though we were, you know, on terrific terms, it was just too far a distance.
Sure.
So now we have a local cellist in New York.
Is that
Um,
Stephanie? That's Stephanie, yes. No, Katie.
Katie, yeah.
Is it
So
Reitman again?
Reitman, yeah,
Reitman.
Katie
Katie
Reitman.
Reitman, yeah.
And yeah, I mean, our connections are you know pretty deep and pretty old. I mean, when I first went to Amsterdam to study, um, I had to take an entrance exam and sort of placement exam, and the school had arranged for somebody to play with me, but that person didn't show up. And Katie Reitman had just played an exam for someone else, and she was already there at the school, at this failing conservatory in Amsterdam. And so I just sort of grabbed her and said, "Can you play my audition for me? Can we just rehearse real quick?" And she said, "Sure." So we were friends ever since.
Yeah.
Uh, and we were roommates in Cologne, where we both lived after Amsterdam. And so we didn't play all of the same with all of the same groups, but we had all the same friends, and
Yeah.
it's just a long connection. And we also both played in a group based in Lisbon. Um,
I'm taking a
and
group to Lisbon this very summer. Go ahead.
I know I read about that.
Ah,
Yeah. So I've been to Lisbon many, many times.
ah,
Played lots of Baroque music in Lisbon, also with Katie. And the other two, Stephanie Corwin, the bassoonist, and Gabe Shuford, the harpsichord player, all three of us actually did graduate work at SUNY Stony Brook. So even though we didn't really overlap, we all knew about each other, and we all took the Baroque ensemble led by the harpsichordist named Arthur Haas. And so we have this kind of common teacher for Baroque music, and also just this common experience of having done grad school at Stony Brook. Um,
and as you said, it's a small world in the
yeah,
Baroque performance area. But I
yeah,
want to just stop you for a second because I think you just hinted at something, some way that I can connect this. Here's what I just kind of want to say and see if it is this man that you mentioned that you
uh-huh,
studied with at SUNY Stony Brook
uh-huh,
as maybe the guiding light of however your performance practice is these days. I'm going to throw this out. We'll see where it goes. But Gabe, I mentioned to you off camera,
uh-huh.
what what stunning interpretation, what glorious leisure, what delicious exploration of every tiny gorgeous little gem and jewel of counterpoint of voice leading of all of that. It's so refreshing. And because of course we all know the Goldbergs, all of us in music, and you very wisely chose to leave some of those variations appropriately for harpsichord alone, which is
Right.
exact. The way you made those choices is just perfect. But his playing, the style of it, the suspension of the bar line.
Yeah.
Wow, he's
Yeah.
superb. And for everybody out there, it's so refreshing. Honestly, this is going to have to. Everybody needs to pay attention to this particular transcription of Goldberg Variations. This is a beauty. As I told you, I can't wait to put it on and play it for people. It's just
Thank-
gorgeous. Have we left anybody out? We spoke of modern instrument. The Baroque bassoonist Stephanie Corwin is playing on
Uh-huh.
a reproduction instrument. What a great sound! What a fabulous instrument!
Yeah,
Wow.
I know.
Did we leave anybody? I think we covered everybody, didn't we, in the ensemble?
Yeah, we did.
Did,
You know, it's funny, um, having a bassoon in the core ensemble and always basically having bassoon in chamber music. We make so many converts in our audiences because people say, "Wow, I didn't know the bassoon was just so fabulous and so gorgeous and so perfect for this music." And it's really great because, the bassoon is an instrument that not that many people really follow that much, It's a little bit, underappreciated. And definitely with Stephanie, it's appreciated.
thank you very much. And you're exactly right because that is the impression. The minute I heard her playing on this, it's like your ears perk up, and it's just so. I almost said funky perfect. You know what I mean? It's just there's that gorgeous bassoon sound that I never thought of, and or expected, and what I think I tried to explain to you is the idea that the color of each of these variations, the mood and character of each of them is not at all infringed upon,
Uh-huh.
and yet we're hearing these other lovely colors of other instruments. In other words, it's really perfect, and I'm amazed that I presume I can give you most of the credit, yeah. But then also there was at a certain point a kind of collective where you all really got into the idea of and matching these colors and sounds and voice leading to certain instruments. Am I close enough?
Definitely, definitely. It was I mean, I would say the initial idea was mine, but it really became a complete collaboration. So
Sounds like what you
everyone
described. That's
had,
amazing all by itself.
yeah,
That's amazing
yeah,
all by itself. And of course, that collaboration in praise of collaborative effort, a
uh-huh,
bassoonist is going to know when would be a perfect time for a bassoon color to, you see what I mean? A
right.
baroque cellist is going to know, that's a line that just suits my register, so collaborative work is perfect. I want to talk about Repast,
Okay,
not the ensemble, the name, okay?
uh-huh,
Because now I'm going to be silly. I love words, but Repast, it's kind of a, I don't know, I'm out of my mind maybe, but Re, as in regarding past, repast, and then repast, a meal of music. And now, go ahead, slap me around. Tell me, how come you came up with repast?
bingo, bingo, you got it.
Really?
That, yeah, that's what it's supposed to be a play on words. Yeah.
And I'm probably the last one of 40,000 to finally figure it out. But it's just like I've been thinking, repast, is that clever or what? Wonderful, wonderful. So I needed to ask that one. Let's talk about other things. We talked about the instruments. I'm going to start. I'm aiming. We're not going to talk the Goldbergs to death.
Uh-huh.
Variation by variation. But I made a couple little highlight notes that I think will be worth my asking you to describe. But let me see if I've got everything else that I wanted to ask you. We talked about this collective venture. That's astonishing. I think we're pretty much there. Okay, I'm daring to now go have a look at the Goldbergs, moment by moment. First of all, I should have asked you this off camera because it may sound silly. All repeats. You take all the repeats, yeah?
Um, you know, in the recording, we actually didn't take all the repeats. We didn't take the repeats in number 6, and
Hmm.
we didn't take all the repeats in number 8. And, you're making a CD, you have a certain number of minutes on the CD, and you have to make it fit. Um,
Well, guess what? You could have fooled me but when you mentioned this, here I have copious note. Okay, number 4, copious note, copious note. Number 5, copious, copious, copious. Number 6, flute, violin, viola, cello, question mark. In other words, it went whoop. Okay. Number 8, wonderful viola, violin, question mark. That's kind of, let's talk about that a little bit. Just in the variation number 8, I had a little trouble in my own mind. If you can find it in your place or can remember
uh,
what exactly I was hearing in terms of viola, violin. Which one or
uh,
the other. Does that ring a bell? I mean, just in general, even. How do you
yeah,
make certain decisions about? Because you're the violist, violinist.
yeah, it's funny that you bring out that sound. So one thing that happened during the recording session is that we recorded out at on Long Island in Stony Brook, and we had 3 days. The first day was just for the solo harpsichord pieces, and the second day was for the pieces without flute, and the third day was for the pieces with flute. And on the day of the um, that we recorded this piece, Variation 8, there was a torrential rainstorm. It was sort of hurricane season on Long Island, and there was so much rain. It's like it was just incredible. And the recital hall, it's climate controlled, but it anyway had sort of issues with too much humidity. And so my violin, the
Hmm.
G string on my violin on that day was really, I was just wrestling with it in order to make it speak. I actually the whole day I was really wrestling with there being too much humidity. And so every time I listen to this variation and I hear those sort of growly bottom registers on the G string of the violin, I go, yeah, it was like 70% humidity and I could almost not make the instrument speak. So I think it's a purely like just circumstantial explanation for why it sounded like that I was trying to still be musical while just having just too much humidity for my instrument.
If I understand you correctly, I may tap myself on my own shoulder in that. Sometimes you dare not ask what could be really stupid questions, and this
Uh-huh.
is a little bit silly, but I think you've just identified, at least in this on this particular variation, this it was marvelous, but it was almost as though you were doing fiddle and I knew you wouldn't have done switched instruments or something, but it's just sort of like something as you described. By the way, were these gut strings or what?
Yeah, I mean the
Uh,
G string is not pure gut. The G string is wrapped with aluminum, but the top three are gut strings. So when you have incredible humidity with
it's
gut
like
strings,
wing.
you just you have to. So yeah, those little places where the very lowest registers sort of pops out.
Yeah, it sounds very
That
viola-ish.
this was just yeah. I was just doing my darndest just to get the sound to come out.
Well, I can tell you it was and is marvelous, but I had to ask the question because I could not figure out how that change in the quality of the sound and the registration, I suppose that you might say, happened.
Uh-huh.
Okay, oh good, okay, good, I feel better. Let's see. I guess what I'm trying to describe is, and I think I've been there a little bit earlier, but it's the whole aura of this performance, which is relaxed, contemplative, gorgeously ornamented on repeats. And by the way, I'm glad you answered that question about your choices. Yeah, no repeats here and here, but you do all the repeats are in most of the others, right? And by the
Yeah.
way, that is also very, very important. The repeats were not there for fun and games. They're there so that the ear and the brain can. So I loved that aspect of it. And also, again, let me get up to his name again, harpsichordist. This
Uh-huh.
man, absolutely extraordinary, Gabe Schuford.
Yeah.
Extraordinary in that I heard everything. He took his time. I hope I'm not being redundant, letting me hear everything. You know what I mean?
Uh,
And
yeah.
that was just a treat, as opposed to passages that in some other sort of more bravura approaches that a harpsichordist might take to some of these variations that are obviously brilliant harpsichord things. You miss all the goodies, and also the tempi are appropriate,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
for whatever the 1640s. I would think things were slower. But anyway, I mean, I have mixed emotions. I love John Elliott Gardner's approach. He really elevated Baroque performance practice in terms of energy and excitement. This Goldberg is, as it should be anyway,
Uh-huh.
very relaxed, and this would have helped the whatever the Grand Duke to sleep the night
Uh-huh.
away. So I just want to point out Gabe again. He's
Uh-huh.
just such intuitive and insightful playing. All of you. And let's talk about embellishments and ornamentation a little bit, because again, it's a standard Baroque practice. If you're repeating a tune, of course, you change it each and every time. And these are exactly the ways they're supposed to be, these retreats. Just one delicious bonbon on top of another in terms of ornamentation. How does that all work in conversation in an ensemble? I mean, how do you piece that together? As a conductor, I've always, I've tried a little bit and I've come to some ideas and scratched down some things and then try, about how to put this together, but it's much more complicated than that. And it either is there or it isn't in many ways. Go ahead. Am I making any sense?
Yeah, no, I mean, especially if it's a canon. And I think the concept of this piece of making an arrangement of it was that um, I felt that the canons so often need more sustained lines than a harpsichord can give. Um, and I just heard them with sustained instruments. But if you're imitating another line, then you do have to agree on what kind of
Yeah.
ornaments you do, because otherwise, it
It
sounds
becomes a
like
mess.
you're listening to the other person or something.
Yeah, and it becomes just kind of a mess if you don't get a little kind of consensus.
Right,
So,
right.
so there were moments in rehearsal and preparation where you all had came to certain
Yeah,
consensuses
uh-huh.
about how the style of embellishing some of these variations.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. And we, you go back and forth. I mean, sometimes you do too much and then you feel like you have to cut it down, or sometimes you feel like it should have more, and so you add more ornaments. It's really, I mean, all of us have been playing Baroque music for long enough that um, you don't, a lot of it is instinctive, but then it does take some refining if you're doing something that actually doesn't sound natural. And we tell each other that. I mean, we say um, whether a person's ornament is good or not. And we agree on what kinds of ornaments and just sort of how to shape them and how long they should be strewn out and that sort of thing. Um,
Thank you. You have just explained once again. I mean, no kidding. I mean, I'm looking at everybody out there. No kidding. You just explained the beautiful perfection of this performance. That kind of you can. I didn't know, but I knew as a listener that there was some kind of consensus in terms of this. Each variation has its own needs in terms of
mhm,
embellishment and ornamentation. And as I think we touched on, it can get crazy. If there isn't a pullback and a re-examination and a consultation and an agreement, so it's
right,
complicated
right, yeah,
ornamentation. And I think you touched on French ornamentation. I mean, it's a whole other school, right? French Baroque embellishment and ornamentation. Crazy,
yeah,
gorgeous, gorgeous. Let's see what else. And then I'm going to ask you what I forgot to ask. We've talked about Repast. Oh, good. I feel so good about that because some people would just say, "Oh, we just Repast. We just came upon it." Nah. There was a reason. We talked about that, and we're down here. Let me just now browse a little bit down through because again, we were talking what 34 variations on the
Thir-
aria.
30 variations,
30.
yeah,
Yeah,
30, yeah,
31 altogether. Got it. Let's see what else I might have pointed out. So I do things in black. If something is, I highlight them in black. Well, just to give you an idea, this the number 23, the 23rd variation is harpsichord alone, just to give everybody an idea. And about what I was saying, taking his time to explore all of the fantastic counterpoint, and that is the period. It's about counterpoint. It's about, and I'm sure they all, the component Bach in particular. I mean, he lived in a small place. I mean, I'm sure it was not like he had a sophisticated audience, particularly in Leipzig. But what I'm trying to say is the intention is there, and to take one's time and sort it all out for us,
uh-huh.
for the listener. It makes such a world of difference. So I just want to congratulate you all on taking your time with each of these variations, exploring them, ornamenting them just elegantly, and in a consensus sort of manner. It's clear from what we hear. You can tell when something just doesn't, or is too gaudy, or is
uh,
too fast, even maybe, stuff like that. So anyway, I love the minores, the sad variations. I'm thinking of number 25, bassoon, violin, cello. That choice of instruments, of
uh-huh.
the three instruments, especially that bassoon. What a glorious color, and a bassoon is a mysterious, kind of sound. So well done throughout. Okay, what else? Now it's my turn to say what do you want to talk about in terms of this recording? How long? What kind of a project was it in terms of the time it took, the years, the funding? Just get a quick little overview because
Right.
everybody's always curious about that.
Right. Well, we first did the first performance of this about a year before we recorded it. Um, a little bit more than a year, actually, a year plus a summer before we recorded it. Um, and we had a really wonderful response from the audiences that we did it for, and that was really um, just really satisfying because you decide to do something like this, and the amount of work that goes into it is
That's why I
just
asked.
crazy. um,
And everybody that I speak to, and that great many people that watch this do produce CDs, so we all know this, and that's why I'd like to talk about it. It's not you just go, oh, let's do a CD. What do you say? No, it's like, oh, now where do we find the money? We get the venue. Who, yeah. So continue. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Um, and so I was happy that we performed it, um, and then we let it sit for a while, and then we performed it again, and then we got it ready for the CD, and we kept on changing our little things in what we had done, up until we recorded it. So that was also an interesting process, just in terms of the the piece evolving and the arrangement evolving. Um,
But no regrets.
and
But no regrets. And it's not like, oh, damn, our third take was so much better than our 47th. You know what I mean? Just no regrets, right? This is a beautiful finished product. And I think what
yeah,
you're saying to me is, yeah, sure enough, this is perfectly so. It was a little different last time and a little different next
uh,
time, right?
right, right,
A live art form.
yeah, right.
So,
And it's funny you ask about the funding. We did a sort of um, crowdfunding thing on a nonprofit website, but we did crowdfunding, and we did our social media thing, and we wrote to our sponsors. We actually um, didn't ever quite finish fundraising for the CD.
is that when
So
Gramps and Grandma come in and pick up the tab?
basically, yeah. And we sort of since then, since it's come out, we've sort of made sure that we don't spend too much money on our other projects of our concert series.
Mhm.
And we have funding from New York State and New York City,
Sure.
which is wonderful. We are very thankful to NISCA and to New York City Department of Cultural Affairs.
Shout out. Shout out.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
Um,
And by the way,
and
we get to put all this information, including links to buy the CD and everything else, up at performingartsreview.net with our interview, and then I'll review the CD. Again,
okay,
I'm behind on the reviews; they take me forever, but I'll get there. Then we'll throw out a whole other batch of when the review is ready. So it's all good. Yeah,
great.
I want to put this up first, as I tell everyone, because people come to that website and they browse and they range through all the CDs there, and they love the interviews. So you'll get good publicity right now, and then later we'll do another punch with the review. So I just wanted to
Great.
get that out of the way. But did I interrupt you? I hope
Uh,
not.
No, I mean, just that the whole recording process was really great. We just loved, we had used our engineer for our live concerts before that, and so we knew him well. And our producer is a colleague who's a Baroque oboist who's also a really talented producer. So it was really key that he knew the style so well. Jeffrey Burgess is his name, and he was just fabulous. And also, as a wind player, he was good with both flute and bassoon, but also just great with everything. He's married to a harpsichordist, and he knew
Nice,
the Goldberg variations in and out, and so
nice, very
all of
nice.
that was just really,
Well, it
yeah,
sounds like because I'm not an acoustician. I'm just a musician, But as I say to people, when the sound is just right,
uh-huh,
when you hear everything and you don't hear too much of anything else,
uh,
uh, then you've got a sound technician that knows what she is doing,
yeah,
and the quality. What the important thing, of course, is to capture the quality of the sound of these wonderful instruments. So this is just a beautiful recording. I think you mentioned you recorded it in a theater at Stony Brook, at
recital hall,
a
yeah,
recital hall there.
at Goldberg, yep,
It's a wonderful
yeah,
room, sounds like. And then about funding, it's just funding. It's that it's not cheap, and you got to go and as you said, you do some fundraising and so on, and that's how it works. And then you have a relative that helps out and never fails. Uh, but people need to know it's not easy, and that's also why I have such tremendous respect for people that put out CDs,
uh-huh,
because that
yeah,
is the high. When you have that finished product, you have reached the highest level that you can possibly achieve at that moment in your career, right? I mean, that is the goal. Okay,
right,
so Repast Baroque Ensemble, you have a a gem of a recording. It is absolutely a gem. This arrangement that you guys have put together, the Goldberg Variations. Shall we go up to the top and do a rundown and be done with it?
Sure.
Anything you need? Is anything coming up? Are you inspired, all of you, to go try and knock your heads against a brick wall to raise another zillion bucks to do another CD? Anything?
You know, it's always right now. I I don't have something that I'm burning to record as soon as we can. I don't
Good.
know yet. Like every program, we do 4 programs a year, and every program we do, I just love, and I say, well, I wonder if we should record this. And then I have no time, and then I get on to the next program, and then we do the next program, and I think, oh, well, this would be great. So I don't know. I mean it yeah. I'm
Well,
not sure yet, but we're
here's what's so.
uh
Everything happens when it's supposed to happen. I am
right.
absolutely convinced of the I mean seriously convinced about it. Things happen or not when they're supposed to happen or not. I love the way you quite sensibly everyone does, but you put put this Goldberg together and then took it out on the road a little bit, played it, got familiar with it, fooled,
Right.
played with the knobs here and there, and then
Right.
fate and circumstance and good luck and everything else came along, and it was like, okay, let's record this one. Anyway,
Right.
it is. If this is your first CD,
No, no,
oh,
we did another one. Also, it's
what did
interesting.
I
We
see it
did it individually. There's a little reference to it in the
on the
booklet
back page? Yeah, I
at
see
the
that.
back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was with a different core ensemble, and that's with violin, viola da gamba,
Mm,
harpsichord, and then another violinist for a
mm,
couple of pieces.
okay.
Um, so that
Nice.
was our first CD.
And no offense intended at all about the first CD, but you know what? This one is the significant one. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I mean, I haven't heard the other CD. I'm just kind of I see now. I'm seeing it on. But you know what? When something, when the forces are right and it all comes together, here,
Yeah.
what you have created. Everybody listen here, please. I'm not Aristotle or anything, but the point is, this is absolutely. This is musicians are really going to want to hear this arrangement. By the way, who publishes it? Do you have it? What is it written out in scratch on pen or what?
It's on a music program called Notion. It's a sort of easier version of Sibelius or Finale,
But
and
not
it's just called,
published, or
no, we have not published it yet. Um,
so uh, therefore you're in trouble because musicians are going to not only just buy the CD, they're going to play this. Is that going to be okay if they
yeah,
approach you and say, hey, we'd really like to play this and we have the right?
sure, sure,
Okay,
yeah,
well, see, well now you've got to get some money and get this thing published. That's all. This
yeah.
arrangement published. It's brilliant. Okay, I have just had a wonderful chat with Baroque violinist, violist Amelia Roosevelt, founder and principal, whatever, dishwasher and everything else, arranger and all the rest of it, of Repast Baroque Ensemble in New York City, I guess, New York City based. Uh, New CD 2019 MRS Classics CD. Goldberg Variations, everybody knows that, in a new arrangement. Underline, underline, wonderful, brilliant, incredible new arrangement for Baroque Ensemble of the Goldberg Variations. Fabulous, and I can't wait to. I hope we generate some interest. It's just a beauty. This was a joy, really
Thank
a
you
joy.
so
So,
much. Just one little thing.
yeah.
It's MSR is the label, not MRS.
Oh, sorry, that's a brain test or something. I just see it
Okay,
now.
just
Yes.
in case people are like,
Yeah.
oh, I'll write that down. It's
Yeah.
MSR. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very
But
much. Let's repeat it. 2009 MSR Classics release. Goldberg Variations, BWV 988, new arrangement for Baroque Ensemble. Fabulous, incredible. Thanks for giving me some time.
thank you.
We'll
This was
see
a
you.
pleasure.
Okay,
Yeah.
bye bye. There we go. Bye.